Things that were weird in my classroom and then stayed weird and I never got used to and weird me out to this day. When I'm walking in the hall and students bark at me. Hey, Mr. Clausen. Got him. Please don't bark at me. Use your words. Behaviors that I thought were weird in my class once, but then just became normal. I had a student that didn't like to actually walk down the aisles of desks. He would only crawl. It's weird at first, and then everyone just got used to it. Just called him Smeagol. Why? So I'll usually go through at the end of the year and help wipe out our iPads just so they have enough storage for the next year. And let me tell you, there's almost nothing as creepy as logging on to one of the iPads and realizing that a student or students took like 500 pictures of you at your desk when you didn't know they were taking your picture. That's not an exaggeration. It was literally 500 photos. Maybe don't. Because it's creepy. Things that were weird in my class and then just became normal. I had a student that really liked to wedge himself into really weird places in class. Weird at first, and then just became normal. Like, oh yeah, he's still back there in the cupboard, reading Calvin and Hobbes. Story time. This is the most I've ever felt like a superhero in my entire life. I used to work at a school that had some violence issues with students fighting, like a lot, and somehow I ended up with hallway duty like every day. So I'd walk around, usually break up a few fights. One day though, I was walking through the hall and I heard that sound that middle schoolers make when someone's about to fight, and they all start cooing like pigeons and instigating people to throw hands. So I rushed over to the sound and two students were squaring up at the bottom of a stairwell. It's a pretty big school and so many students were crowding around and I couldn't get to the stairs. So I made the decision to hop the railing and jump. Now in reality, it was probably only like 10 feet, but it felt like I was falling a really long time. But I did time the distance perfectly and landed right in between the two students. Now I really wish I had like an epic catchphrase in my back pocket, so when everyone was silent, I was like, "Not on my watch, guys." But I'm pretty sure I just squeaked out, "Nope," half out of breath. I just remember everyone staring at me. It was really quiet, and as everyone kind of dispersed and walked away, just one kid in the back just said, "Where the f*** did he come from?" And I've never felt more like a superhero in my life. So this year, I got one of these really cool headset with the microphone and the speaker to make myself louder. But my goal by the end of the year is to somehow patch this thing so I can get auto-tune on it. Because I really want to be handing out assignments like, "You have a test tomorrow and you really need to study. Because if you don't study, you're gonna fail your test." That's how I want to give my instructions from now on. Sounding like T-Pain. Life goal. So I like to keep a lot of student artwork. And you might say to yourself like, "Oh, that's sentimental, that's sweet." But I'm fully just banking on one of my students becoming famous and then immediately selling these on eBay. I just need one student. So I always make them sign their artwork. It's my retirement plan. It's not the worst idea I've ever had. Hi, welcome to another episode of Weird Things My Students Give Me. Some of you may know, it's an unpopular opinion on TikTok, but I don't like cats. My students gave me this morning some cat magnets, but not just like cute cat magnets, only their rear halves. Which begs the question, what company on Amazon is just making cat rear end magnets? Like, how is that a market? Just don't know how I feel about cat rear ends as magnets. I don't know how I became the teacher that students just give weird stuff to, but apparently that's my thing now. I had 2 students that gave me this, and on the note it just says, "Mr. C, we thought you needed this." It's an I Heart Fairies lunchbox. Why? I don't know. What am I going to do with an I Heart Fairies lunchbox? Pack my lunch in it and eat out of it. Duh. Why wouldn't I use it? Nothing wrong with fairies. We had a book fair once, and the next day I went to check my mail in my mailbox, and I had a book in there. It was this book of shapes, and there was a note on it saying that a student had got it at the book fair and left it for me, and I was like, oh, I don't know any of the first or second graders here at school, really run across their paths very much, but I was like, that's sweet. But no. The next day, one of my 8th graders came up to me and said, "Yo, Sea-Dog, did you get the book I bought for you at the book fair?" I was really confused. I was like, "No, I didn't get one. It's that little book of shapes." I was like, "Oh, that was from you, an 8th grader, giving me a small book of shapes." So now usually during reading time, I will read this. I'm like the best at shapes. So my first year of teaching, I had a student that would pop around the door every morning and go, "Good morning, Mr. Clausen," and try to scare me. Really sweet kid, did it every morning. So finally I started hiding behind my door so she'd pop her head around and be like, "Good morning," scare her back. So eventually it turned into a competition of just who could say good morning first to the other person. So she was my student for a year, played this game, and all of a sudden next year, the first day, some new student pops her head around the corner and goes, "Good morning, Mr. Clausen." I was like, "You're not by chance sisters with a student I had last year?" She was like, "Yeah, that was my sister." So then I played for another 2 years, and this year I came to school and this tiny little girl pokes her head around the corner and goes, "Good morning, Mr. Clausen." And I was like, who is this tiny student? Not even my student. And finally the 3rd day she comes around and says it again. And so I go over to her teacher and I'm like, "Does she have this last name?" And she was like, "Oh, yeah, absolutely." And I thought, the competitiveness you need to pass along your game for 4 years to your younger siblings, just so you can say that you win, is to another level. I respect that. It's the long play. So I actually really hate cats. And I had a student once and she was like, "Oh, Mr. Clausen, I went to the store and I bought you this." I was like, "Oh, why'd you do that? I really hate cats." She's like, "No, I know that you hate cats. Actually, it's a pen. You can pull its head off and then write with its decapitated body." I was like, "Oh, you get me." I had a student who was an 8th grader last year. Today's his first day of high school. I got an email from him. Nothing in the subject line, nothing in the body of the email, just one attachment. On his first day of high school, he just photoshopped my face onto a bunch of cats. Why? You have to stop making TikToks about students photoshopping your face onto animals and emailing it to you. Otherwise, your inbox becomes flooded with weird pictures from previous students. And it's weird. So every year on the first day of school, I let my students write in some anonymous questions. I'll go throughout the week and answer them. And this one was, how do you get TikTok famous? Which I still don't know. But the answer I gave was, keep being weird until you find a group of people who are equally as weird as you are. I feel like that sums up teachers on TikTok. We're a weird bunch.